So how's it going?
Wonderful.
Good, good. Well, thanks for taking some time with me. Appreciate it. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell a little of your background and how you got to this point in your life?
All right. My name is Stephen Iltz. I'm retired. Used to work for the airlines, and I'm a former mobile home park owner. And I flipped about 21 homes in my own park and sold them on terms and turned my park into 100% owner-occupied park.
Great, 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 great. So, and you and I had chatted a little bit and swapped some emails back and forth about some items that would be of interest to park owners and park managers from your perspective, because you were there and did that. And so as we're talking to parks, some of the things that might be like hot buttons for them. So, and thanks for taking the time to do this. So what are the core business values that a mobile home park owner or park manager might be looking for?
Well, their most important core business is to fill the park with homes. And the ideal situation is where every home is a owner-owned home and not a rental. So that's the key issue that the park manager needs to address. And so there's an education phase because not all park managers realize what their core values are and what their goals are. And most parks are owned by distant landowners, and they do need some direction.
Yeah.
So parks need to raise their rents to the market value. That's one of their core values, and they need to strengthen their customers' sense of community and wanting to stay. The park also needs to maintain a reserve fund for capital improvements such as roads, water, sewer, and any master meter items. So anytime that they start using their capital to buy homes is taking away from their capital account, which does not help them one bit.
Right, right.
And the other part that I found when I was filling up my park, as you do so and you improve the park, all the undesirables start to feel a little bit out of place. And you're essentially creating a survivor island routine where people that are undesirable that are causing problems may find out that their lease is not renewed and they may have to move out. So that is a real incentive for people to straighten up their acts.
Okay. So you mentioned capital expenditures. So, because I know, I've worked in parks where the manager or owner don't take on any projects. They want somebody else to do them all. And then some don't want any outsiders because they want to do the project. So in your park, you said you flipped a bunch of them. So were you doing that, or did you allow other investors in there too?
Well, I allow anyone else that would want to come into the park, but I never found anybody that approached us.
So a little aside here, we're trying to get into parks, and here's a park owner who was trying to find people to work in his park.
I tried getting mobile home dealers to bring in homes without space rent so they could sell them, but I couldn't encourage that. I tried move-in incentives. I only got a few. So that pretty much forced me into flipping homes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, what kind of different park ownership scenarios are there? Like some are local, some are remote. I mean, how does that, from your perspective, work?
Well, from my perspective, the smaller the park, the chances of a local owner is pretty high. But as you start getting to the 100 or something that appears close to 100 units, generally the owners are distant owners. And so they don't show up in their park very often. Simply because I was doing a lot of capital improvements and flipping homes in my own park, I would show up there about 4 times a year. But it's a matter of educating your manager as to what needs to be done and directing them to make the improvements to the park. So it's pretty easy to determine whether or not it's a distant owner simply by looking at the hours that the park manager is available in the park. If they have posted hours, it's generally a distant owner, I would imagine.
Good deal. So then it should be pretty easy to tell from those parameters, right? Pretty much.
All right.
Yeah. So what's the main focus of owners usually? I mean, what do they look for?
Well, the larger parks, they're all trying to achieve full occupancy to begin with, and secondly, they're trying to get out of the rental market for renting homes by having all owner-occupied homes. Your ability to raise the rent increases, the desirability of the park, the value of the park increases. So you can tell whether or not a park is trying to improve itself, and the nicer the park, the better the higher the rents are going to be.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen a few where they had a lot of empty spaces, and in talking to some of the people that had them listed, they weren't happy with the management, and people had to actually move their homes out when normally they sit there and they don't move them themselves, right?
Right.
So they had a lot of empty spaces, and then that causes less cash flow, and so
And
less,
more crime.
yeah, more crime and less maintenance. They're not taking care of stuff because they don't want to spend the extra money. So it just compounds. It becomes a snowball, right?
Well, right. I had to educate my park managers. They had a couple of rentals in my park, and they saw the homes that I was flipping and carrying contracts on. And I told them one evening, I says, how would you like to get a better return on your rentals? And they said, yeah, well, show us. And I said, well, sell them on contract. And they said, that's great. We love it. Because when it's not a rental, you don't have to replace broken items, fix appliances, replace carpet. You just get a better quality tenant.
Right, right. Yeah, it's more a pride of ownership if they're putting some blood into it instead of just renting and
Right.
using, and a lot of times abusing the place, right? So
Correct.
now, what about empty spaces? How does that affect a park when you have an empty space and no pad rent coming in?
Well, it's a huge draw on the finances, simply because not only is that space not earning you any money, but it's costing you money because you have to maintain that space now. You have to mow the lawn around it, and you have to keep undesirables off of it. People using it to dump all their stuff. So a park rent, no matter what it is, if it's like $200 a month, that essentially means that space is worth $20,000 towards the value of the park. So you get to subtract that, and you have a high vacancy, and your park value drops dramatically.
Well, a lot of rents today aren't $200 either. They're
Right.
they're 500 and that kind of range. A lot of them. So what happens when a unit's abandoned? People get evicted, and how does the park manager owner play into that?
Well, the park manager now has to contact the lender and send them bills every month for their space rent. And generally, lenders do not pay those every month. They just keep on adding towards the bill. When the bill gets big enough and it comes time where they found somebody who's willing to buy it, they like to discount that bill. So if you're collecting $500 a month, you're certainly not going to get $500 for each month that it went vacant, because they're going to ask for a big discount. And if it remains vacant, the likelihood that it'll be taken out of the park becomes greater all the time.
So what if the tenant owns the home first, they don't have a lender, and then they quit paying rent and you evict them? What happens to that unit?
Well, their first desirable way to go is to remove it themselves. But if they're having financial problems, then they probably abandon it. So, you still have to go through the legal process, in order to take over that property.
Okay, but basically you go through that, and then the park then owns the unit, right?
Right.
And then you can sell it or rent it if you want to mess with that or whatever. Yeah, cool. So if I was coming into a park and I wanted to present myself as a benefit, how might I do that to show that I'm, obviously I'm trying to make money, but it's not just about making money to the park manager. They don't care. They want their issues dealt with, right? So how would I present that to them to help them in their efforts?
Well, you're providing a benefit because you're taking a house that needs improvements, so you're fixing it up. Now it'll be worth more money. And when you get the new buyer to take out a loan in order to buy it, that means that you have absolutely no control after the deal is done. So it's a separate transaction, and the park never feels like they're in jeopardy that you will pull out your home, because the new buyer controls that. So it's a matter of education. And it also allows them to increase the park rent, test market it out. If you were $500 a month and you raise it to $525, that might be a new price point for all the rest of the other tenants down the road.
Cool. So, are there other benefits that I might offer to? I know you mentioned if one gets pulled out, it's kind of starts a spiral sometimes. So, how could an investor help alleviate some of that with park managers or owners?
Well, you can enter an agreement with them that you're not going to pull the house out of the park. That's probably the best way. It's just a matter of education. Most park managers are not well educated about what you do and how they improve the overall value of their parks.
Yeah. Well, I know one park we worked in, we did two in that park, and they had a first right of refusal clause in their lease. So if you were going to pull it out, you bought it for $15,000 and you're going to pull it to another park, the park had the right to buy it at the same $15,000 that you were going to pay and leave it there. That way they don't have an empty space and have to deal with all the ramifications. So another park that I went into, they didn't have that, and a home right next to one that I was rehabbing, they pulled it out, and the park owner told me how frustrated she was about the whole thing because obviously it's a hole in the park and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, why don't you put a first right of refusal clause in your lease? And she said, well, what's that? So I showed her what this other park had, and she goes, okay, I'm using that, and had everybody in the park come and sign a new copy of the lease adding the first right of refusal deal so that she wouldn't have them taken unless she didn't want it, and they could pull it out. So I helped her in that. Kind of what you were talking about.
Well, the other added benefit of your business is that once you fix up a unit, everyone else in the park becomes aware of it, and some people would like to trade up. So,
good point. Yeah,
they'll move out of their place and move into yours. That leaves another property that you can fix up.
So
it has a cascading effect. I had several in my own park that did that moved up to a bigger home.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know one of the things that we've done before is make a flyer that says pick your neighbor, and then tell the people surrounding the house or, in other areas of the park, and then give them a referral fee. If they find a buyer, we give them a couple $100, whatever it is, and that way they can, find somebody to move into the park instead of us having to do all the marketing. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, so that's good. So what are some of the oddball deals that you ran into that, as a manager that, might be funny or frustrating or, that kind of thing?
I don't have any oddball deals that went through in my park. I had a great park manager.
Good deal.
It was like the mayor of a city, and everyone treated him as mayor. So there was no riffraff going on.
Oh, that's great. Good deal. Anything else that I might have forgotten to ask about that you think might be important?
I don't have anything else to add to that.
Oh yeah, what major thing did you take away from being a park owner? What did you learn from the process? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Actually, it was a great experience. It was I had never owned a park before. It was a long distance away. It was not my first choice for a park, but the important part that I did was not to raise the rents to start off with. I made capital improvements. Everyone saw that it was under different management and that we did care. We were trying to clean the place up and fill it up. And practically all the homes that I sold in the park were from friends that already lived in the park. So marketing was very easy. The people who bought my homes never really considered much about what the price I was asking for. They never questioned that. They never dickered it down. And they always took my financing rather than paying cash for it or getting another lender. And they were very happy.
That's great. And then you were able to make money on your money by having it on payments, right?
Yeah, it was a huge rate of return.
That's great. Awesome. How did you come to buy the park? I was thinking of that earlier and I forgot. How did you come to be the owner?
Well, I became the owner because of my broker. My broker had another client that owned two parks. One was in Dallas, Texas, near Love Field, and he also owned this other park. Now, the park at Love Field, the homes were so close together that I think it was probably impossible to move a home out of it.
Oh, wow.
And the property became so valuable for redevelopment that they had an offer they couldn't refuse, and so they wanted to sell both parks. They had difficulties with the park that I ended up owning, that every time they tried to raise the rent, people moved out.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm.
So they had a huge vacancy over there, and they couldn't understand why. So it was pretty well run down. It needed a lot of capital improvements, and
Mm-hmm.
once the tenants saw the improvements going on and things getting cleaned up, they all wanted to stay. They didn't want to move out.
Great. Good deal.
Well, I ended up sub-metering all the water in the park simply because we ended up being on city sewer, and so we needed to bill out all the water and sewer on a separate bill.
Yep, yep. Well, it sounds like your experience as an owner was positive, and
Very positive.
you're looking to buy another one, from what you told me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Looking for another one. It's not gonna be local.
Yeah,
It's gonna be out in the Midwest.
yeah. Good deal. Okay, well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Bill.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right.
Have a great day.
You do the same.
Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.